We are live. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast. This is our ninth episode.
Yay.
Yay. And we were just talking about what we were going to talk about today because no one had any questions for us. So if you're tuning in and watching this, please feel free to um, send us some comments while we're on live and we will respond to them. So, Kelly, what do you want to start us off with today?
Pick a topic, any topic. Um, I think, we were talking before the show, and one of the things that I've heard quite a lot of lately is people feeling like they're kind of floating. They're not really grounded, even after they go through and ground themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's because we just don't want to be in this dimension anymore. But what do you tell people who come to you with that kind of a situation? I tell them to try a different method of grounding themselves, ask themselves, why do you not want to be grounded?
Mhm.
But still people kind of look at you funny when or at least they do me when I tell them, why don't you want to be grounded? They're like,
I
well,
usually say it differently. I usually say, "What are you struggling with being on Earth about?"
yeah,
Because I don't know that it's so much, and I agree with you. Is like, which dimension, first of all, are you grounding into? Because
right.
there's the third dimension, which a lot of people still live in, and there's a lot of people who now are living in the fifth dimension. So, which dimension are you actually grounding in? And then, so many of the people, my experience has been, myself included, is that I don't want to be here on Earth. Earth is not a fun place. So why
No.
would I ever want? And when I'm grounded, I get flooded with messages about what's going to happen in the earth and where we're going to go. So it's like, why would I want to connect to that?
Right, right. And I think kind of associated with that, most of the people who are coming to me with that
Mhm,
are empaths, and they've just now realized that
mhm,
they are empaths. And I've had people come to me. I've always had people, complete strangers, come up to me on the street and tell me their life story. Always. When I was a little kid, it happened to me.
mhm,
And lately, I'm finding a lot of people that I know personally in my area who have come to me and say, I went over to the grocery store in a different town, Benson, and people were just walking up to me like we were on old friends, and I didn't know any of them, and it was kind of freaking me out, and I don't know why. And she called. I was talking to her on the way when she was on her way home down I-10, and I'm like, well, maybe we should have this conversation later. But she was very freaked out, and I have told her before, because I've done Reiki on her before, that she
mhm,
was an empath. And she, like a lot of people out here, there's no such thing. That doesn't make any sense. And now she's realized, oh, wow, this really is happening to me. And it's kind of freaky. I don't know what that's like because my entire life I've known that
mhm,
I was empathic. But I'm finding so many people, most of them in their 50s and 60s, oddly enough, who all of a sudden are like, what is happening to me? Why is this happening to me?
mhm,
And I think that goes along with, because she's also one of the people that told me she couldn't ground herself. And
mhm,
I think that's kind of going hand in hand. More people are waking up
mhm.
to who they are, to their gifts, to their abilities. And all of a sudden they're like, but this isn't me. This isn't me as I know me. And what do I do with this?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that I used to say being grounded is overrated, but my way of dealing with it is I would put my grounding cords in, but then I would have tether cords so I could wear like hair. I sort of on the earth, sort of not. I'm sort of connected, sort of, because in order to manifest anything, you need to be connected.
right.
And that's why I kept getting short circuited because I didn't want to connect.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
my spirit team has a sense of humor and they like to sing the Glades plug it in commercial when I'm really not grounded. So,
Yeah, I was taught when I was young, and I teach people, always have, that to ground yourself imagine like roots,
Mhm.
red roots going down from the bottoms of your feet into the center of the earth. And I had a teacher one time, a spiritual teacher, who told me, "You've got the longest tree roots I've ever seen," because I was like 20 feet off the ground, but I was still connected.
Mhm.
It was just longer roots. And she's the one that told me, you reel yourself back in. You can't, you're getting too far, to manifest anything. And I was, well, I'm doing everything right. What is blocking me? Well, it's because you're not connected to the earth. Oh,
The other thing too is how I learned how to do it, and I kind of like doing it this way. Not only do the roots come from the bottom of your feet, they come out of your second chakra from the front and back and go all the way down into the earth. And then there's some kind of plate with your name on it, and you can screw your cords in or connect
that's nice.
any way. And then the earth energy comes up through your cords,
Mhm.
like your hips, holding you.
Yeah, that's a good way. I like that. That's a good way to do that. It's there's so many different ways
Mhm.
that people can ground themselves. It just seems funny to me that of all the questions that I've been asked from people out in my area since I've moved here,
Uh-huh.
um, lately it's all about grounding. It's in the past it's been different things, from different people, but now it's everybody wants to know, you know, I don't feel like I'm in my body. How do I ground? What is this grounding thing? And it's
I have a
interesting.
funny story with grounding. In the beginning, my spirit team, since I didn't ever want to be grounded, I had these like red clown shoes that I would energetically walk around in, and then I had fairies holding my feet down to the earth. That went on for quite a while until I
That's
got better with grounding myself. And I think most people now would say that I'm actually pretty grounded. They're like, how can you be both? Like, because you just get information like there's no tomorrow. Like if I ask you a question, you'll just get these downloads of information to give me.
right.
And yet you're so like down to earth and feel so connected and present and here. And I think that's for me, both sides of my brain, like, because my day job is very analytical and logical and linear. And then, so I think I use both parts of my brain pretty
Yeah.
equally, and probably other parts of my brain that other people, I don't know. But it's just kind of interesting. So we have some people watching. So if you're watching, say hi, let us know where you're watching us from. And if you have any questions, pop them into the comments section and we will be happy to tackle them as well. And I think we talked about this before because I know you just had a birthday and I know I'm coming up to my birthday. And I don't know about you, but I seem to do a ton of work around my birthday. It's like I always have a huge transformation.
Yep.
And so, like, I've been going through this huge transformation the last couple weeks, and it's like been really intense and interesting. And we were talking before where I did a reading on Instagram. And if anyone wants to see it, my name on Instagram is, because I think this is funny, no nonsense intuitive. So that's what I made my Instagram name. But it's the cards for new beginnings, transformation, and fertility, which to me is birthing new ideas. It's not necessarily getting pregnant or building a family, but
Right.
and I'm just like, oh my God, those three cards together just seem, and I was just pulling cards for the week, seemed so intense. You
Yeah.
know? And I'm just like, what is this week? I thought last week was intense. I'm like, it's got nothing on this week so far, and it's only Wednesday.
Yeah. I think those cards pertain to a whole lot of people.
Mhm.
There's just a lot going on, and a lot of people are, for lack of a better word, lost right now. I've heard that a lot lately too. And I think it's because there is so much energetically going on right now
Mhm.
that if people are slightly in tune, they're feeling it. I
Mhm.
think more and more people are just feeling these little things. So lots of beginnings, lots of transitions for a lot of people. But I do the same thing around my birthday.
Mhm.
Like a month before my birthday, I start it. And then right after my birthday, usually I'm like, oh, okay, I made it through again. But this birthday, I thought would be a lot weirder and
Mhm.
tougher on me than it really was. And I think that's because I just have abandoned all hope on this in this dimension. It is what it is. If it's going to be heavy energy, it's going to be heavy energy. And I just work on me
Mhm.
and how I get away from, I don't watch news anymore. I talk to very few people, on and on and on. But yeah, birthdays are
And
strange.
yet people are seeking you out.
I'm hiding as best I can, and they're finding
You're
me.
not doing a very good job.
I'm not. But recently, a TV show that I was on
Uh-huh.
years ago is a morning blend, and they have morning blends in different cities across the country. Well, I did all of them.
Mhm.
And recently, someone called me and said, "Hey, I just saw you on TV." Yeah, that was 4 years ago. But it's like it's all circling, back around, and I just find it really interesting.
Well, my theory is because we can't hide anymore. The
No,
world needs us to be us now. So we're going to continue to be given these opportunities for us to really be who we're meant to be, even if it scares us.
yeah, yeah.
Because I have a big one coming up in about a week and a half, and I'm doing everything in my power not to sabotage it.
You won't. It'll be fine. All the plans I had for my birthday this year, none of them happened. All the plans fell apart at the last possible minute. And at first, I was really kind of upset by it. And then I was like, you know what? I think I can celebrate better by myself
Mhm.
than with all of these other people. That truly, even though my neighbors are very helpful and everyone in this area helps everyone else, I have very little in common with any of them. I don't have any local
Mhm.
friends, people I would call friends.
Well, you can do what I do. Last year I had a Zoom birthday party, and I'm having another one this year.
Cool.
Just like with some of my two of my friends that I grew up with, we try and go out for birthdays and stuff. So we're doing another Zoom party. So
That would work. Very
so
cool.
should be interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. So what other types of things do we want to talk about?
Um, I think a big one for a lot of people with all the ick that's going around, all the heavy energy, is how do you stay positive?
Hmm.
How do you not feed into, all the ickiness?
Hmm.
I have some family drama going on right now, and it's just I'm trying my very, very best to stay out of all of it and just away from it. And yet I know my former self would have been right in the middle of everything. So
Well,
I
I know that I get people who test me.
yeah,
Like, a lot of readings sometimes that I used to get is, okay, you're psychic. Let's see what you know.
right,
I'm like,
right.
really, you don't want to do that with me. My favorite saying right now is underestimate me. That'll be fun.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think it's true. And yes, because I didn't want to put myself out there, I didn't want to necessarily say what my gifts or abilities or talents were. So generally, I think, come across as kind of low key. And, so when I like open my mouth to talk, people are usually surprised at like how much information I really get. Because
yeah.
I don't think I well, maybe I do. I don't think I come across as someone who's gonna, I'll say it in a different way, in an ego sort of way. I usually don't come across from my ego. At least I don't think so. Maybe I do, and I
You
just don't know.
don't. You don't at all. That's um, the person I was speaking to this afternoon told me, I had no idea you could do this. Do what? And what did I do? And to me, and I think to a lot of gifted people, it is so easy for me. And it just takes, it's like, oh, you want to know that? Okay. Okay, you answer this question. And it amazes people. And I'm always stunned by how amazed they are. because people look at me and I'm normally in jeans, cowboy boots, and a t-shirt if I'm leaving my place, just because that's sort of our informal dress code around here. And believe me, some of the stuff I have to walk through in the morning feeding horses, you wouldn't want to be wearing anything but big boots.
Mhm.
Um, so they don't associate me with someone who has the gifts that I have.
Mhm.
And every once in a while, I'll run into someone, usually at the feed store. That's my big things. We meet people at the dump and the feed store.
Mhm.
But, one or the other. And they'll always say, I didn't know you did what you do. And like, the magnets on the side of my car don't give it away. I mean, do you follow me on Facebook? And most of the people locally do.
Mhm.
We all kind of follow each other on Facebook. So I know I'm not really hiding. And yet so many people, for whatever reason, are just shocked.
Well, I think, listening to you tell this, it reminds me of I think people just don't know how to react to it,
Right, right.
and I think that's their way of reacting, saying, "I didn't know you did this," because they don't know what else to say, and they're also wondering if you can read their mind while they're standing there talking to you.
And sometimes I can.
Well, and that's the scary part. I think that people have said that, "Well, I don't know that I really want you to know anything because I feel like you could read my mind." And I'm like, "Well, one, I would never do that because that would be a breach."
Right, it's a breach of privacy.
Mhm,
But also, I'm not getting the information from their minds.
mhm,
And none of us are. We're not mind readers. We are getting our information from other sources, but they don't understand what it is. A friend of mine, through theater, there's a
mhm.
theater around here. I've been very involved in it. And
What aren't you involved in?
I kind of like being busy. It keeps me out of trouble.
Mm,
But I met him at the feed store, and his dog was with him. It's usually everybody out here travels with their dog. It's sort of a thing you have to do.
mhm.
But he was in the feed store, and I walked by and I said, it's under the passenger seat in the back. And he looked at me. And I said, I don't know why I just said that. And he called me later and he said, do you know that dog was in the floorboard staring under that seat until I reached under there. And it was a dog toy.
Hmm,
He had lost it under the seat. But it just, in the walking through the feed store, it just boom, I have to say this to this person. And if
mhm,
I hadn't known him as well as I do, I probably wouldn't have said it. I
mhm.
would have just kept on going. But because I know him and he teases me all the time about being our local psychic, I um, I felt the need to kind of.
What do you think about the term psychic? Have we
I don't
talked
like
about
it.
that before?
Yeah, I don't like it. It has all sorts of negative connotations for people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every Ren Fair, shyster. And there was a time in my life where I was a swashbuckler at a Ren Fair,
Mhm,
and I got to know something. And I know these people who were charging for palm readings and tarot and all this stuff. They didn't know what they were doing. They
mhm,
were doing it as sort of a sideshow thing,
mhm.
which is fine if you're telling people you're doing this for entertainment. But so many people want real answers, and I don't think that's fair.
That's why I didn't go with no nonsense psychic. I went with no nonsense intuitive. I really like the sound of no nonsense psychic better, but I also struggle sometimes with the connotation of psychic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And really, intuitive is almost getting that same way, especially on social media.
But
What
then
do you
what's our next choice?
think? Right. I don't know what our next choice is, but I don't even like the terminology doing readings. I don't even like that anymore because people have such a bad taste in their mouth about it. But how do you feel? And I've seen this all the time, and it bothers me, and I've never said anything about it.
Mhm.
Uh, I've taught energy healing, I've taught meditation, I've taught a whole bunch of stuff. And I have a lot of friends who also teach a lot of things. And every once in a while, you'll see one of their beginner students start posting about how they're an expert on social media and
Mhm.
how they know everything. And they're doing a very good job marketing.
Mhm.
And, that's to their credit. They know how to do this. But because they're not being honest with, hey, this is a new thing I'm starting. I want to develop my gifts or however they want. They start talking about themselves as an expert. And honestly, I don't think any of us are ever true experts in anything. But to have someone that took a 1 weekend course going out there and marketing themselves, I think that's why things like psychic have such a bad
Mhm.
a bad sense about them. What do you think about that?
I don't disagree with you. I have a really hard time with people who do that. Like I've taken some of those Facebook things online, and I always think it's interesting. Some people are really good at it, and you can tell some people are not.
Right.
And what they're selling, I mean, I think when you're empathic, and you find it really hard to deal with people who are not being truthful.
Yeah.
It like turns you off right away.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's how I choose to deal with it. I mean, I don't oftentimes say anything. I just, they're like, I know you know something. And I'm like, well, you're the one who's touting yourself as an expert, not me.
Right.
I,
Right.
I believe that the further you go down the path, the more you don't know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that you're just being guided and led, and you're given the information that you need at the time to help you with where you are. I know people think I know a lot of stuff, and I mean, I've read a lot and I've studied a lot, and I do know a lot of things. I still wouldn't even consider myself an expert in the metaphysical world. I think
No.
that I have gifts and I have abilities, and when someone has a question around it, I can usually answer it, and I can talk about a variety of different things. I don't know that that makes me, and I think it's how you define expert.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause I don't think any of us ever learn everything we need to learn. It's just not feasible. But I had someone recently who I knew was a newbie
Mhm.
passing themselves off as an expert and called me to have me interpret her readings that she got paid for from somebody else. No, 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 no.
I like to ask them, and I know this is probably not the best way to go about it, but I like to ask them questions that I know they can't answer.
Yeah,
So I'll just sit and ask them questions to like, well, what does this mean to you? Well, where did you get this from? Well, what does that mean? Why did you answer the question this way? And then it really confuses them.
yeah. It just hit me the wrong way when that situation came up. And in my head, I was going, you took one weekend course. It just, and I don't doubt that this person does have some gifts,
Mhm.
but I didn't even start doing readings until I had been studying and practicing for years
Mhm.
on, friends, close friends, or, my cousins. But I didn't charge anyone for a reading until I was very comfortable with was getting the correct information from the correct places. And, it just kind of really hit me when that happened the other day. It's like,
And I'm under the belief that anyone can call themselves anything. Who am I to judge? I
right,
think that you have to be able to back up what you say you can do.
right.
And I've had teachers in the past that I've had to interpret the reading that they gave me back to them because they couldn't understand what they were talking about.
Yeah,
And I'm like, then why am I paying you?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
interesting.
I had a fairly popular in the Southern California area reading person.
Hmm.
I hesitate to call her a psychic because, but I had a reading with her, and she kept. It looked like she was in pain,
Hmm.
and she says, "I don't know how to interpret this." Like, what are you trying to interpret?
Well,
And
see,
she
that's the thing. A good reader won't interpret. A good reader will just say, "This is what I'm getting. What does
This
it
is what
mean
I'm
to you?"
seeing. Yeah. And does this resonate with you? Not, I don't know what I'm seeing. Help me out here. And, she kept seeing a black horse.
Mhm.
And I just don't understand. Is it, horses are strength, horses are freedom, horses are, his name is Calliope and he's mine. And she was not prepared for the possibility that I might actually have a black horse. And she kept seeing this animal. It's like, yeah, he was absolutely my best friend for many years. And at the time that I had seen her, I left, went on this trip, knowing that when I went home, I would have to put him down because he had cancer. And that's what she was seeing.
Mhm.
But she didn't know what she was seeing. I'm like, do you not know anyone with horses? Have you never seen a horse? I don't.
Well, and for me, like when I do readings and how I do readings, I'll just make statements or say things, or I'll say, you know, how does that sound to you? Or what does that mean to you? Because I learned a long time ago that I needed to take my filter out of it
Yeah,
because it changes the readings.
yeah,
When you try and figure out what this means, that's not your job. Your job
yeah,
is to just give the person the information
right.
in the purest form, and it's up to them to decide what they want to do with it.
Yeah, she was trying to attach some esoteric meaning
Mhm.
to seeing a horse. And yeah, horses symbolize a lot of things to a lot of people, but in that instance, it was actually my horse. And it still makes me laugh because it was so funny. She
Mhm.
was just, the expression on her face was like she was in pain, trying to figure out why she was seeing this horse. And it just cracked me up. And it still does. It really does.
I
You know,
think I think in a reading I did the other day, I said, "I'm not sure why I'm telling you this, but this is what they keep repeating in my head.
yeah.
What does this mean to you?"
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's typically the way most people who do readings will approach it. This is what I'm getting, you know, does it resonate with you is a question I will ask sometimes, especially if they're sitting there going, if they're directly across from me and they get this totally blank face, and like, either I have shocked you into stupor or,
I've had a lot of teachers, and Lisa Williams talks about this all the time when she does readings, is that when you're giving someone a reading, they get amnesia.
yeah,
Like, they're so shocked that you're getting this information that they forget who's actually in their life and that some of these things are true, and they just look at you like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, um, I had a teacher who on the first day of class um, asked me if I wanted to teach. She's like, "Why are you even here? What are you doing?" And it was a Reiki class, and I am a Reiki master, and I took that class because I used to be a massage therapist.
Mhm.
And that was a great, easy continuing education credit for me to take a class I already knew about. But I didn't know this teacher. And the
Mhm.
first day, she's like, wait a minute, would you like to teach? No, no, I want you to just sign the continuing education card and I will go. But sometimes I have stupefied teachers, and I know you have too. It's just they don't really know where to put me. They don't know how to act. They don't know what to say. I had a teacher that kept asking me, "Is that right? You're the teacher." Yeah,
Yeah, I've had that before too. Or, "What are you getting on this?" Or,
yeah,
"Gail, could you speak to this to the class?" I'm like, "I could, and it's your class."
yeah. And it's weird,
Yeah.
but It is what it is. I think if more people knew, or if more people could see how my brain works, it would be really, really terrifying to them. I have a when I was doing real estate, I've always fed birds. It's my animal magnetism. I can't get rid of them. And there was this raven,
Mhm.
and he was injured, and he was so badly injured that he let me pick him up. Well, I could see that he had a broken leg, and he was injured. So I brought him in. I wrapped his little leg in purple horse wrap,
Mhm.
and put him in a carrier. And my neighbor said, well, you should take him to a wildlife rescuer. Yeah, hi, that's me. And so I kept him, and I nursed him back to health. And while he was healing, he started talking. Every morning I would say, hello, sunshine. And he learned to say, oh, sunshine.
Mhm.
And it sounded like he was a British bird
Mhm.
because the words came out with a British accent. And I just found it really funny. And when I let him go, he stayed around, and he would freak out the neighbors because he would talk to them.
Mhm.
And I had one neighbor came over, and she goes, I don't know why I think this has something to do with you, but a raven just said hello to me. Yes, yes, that would be me. But he's still here.
Okay.
Um, and, I have a bunch of ravens. But when I was doing real estate, the ravens would follow me. And they would always arrive at the property I was showing a few minutes before I did. And
Mhm.
I would get calls from other agents. Your birds are here. Where are you?
Mhm.
And I had no idea that was happening until the second or third time
Uh-huh.
someone mentioned this big flock of ravens appears. And then 5 minutes later, I drive up. So they still do that. I don't do real estate anymore, but they're still around here, mostly annoying my neighbors. So
Yeah,
maybe that's why.
it's so when you take the time to sit down and look at signs or look at the things that are happening, or when you look back in retrospect, it's so interesting that we don't always catch all the things that are happening.
Yeah.
And I've talked about it before, but when my parents died, particularly, well, I mean, I knew when both my parents were going to die, and I argued with hospice, and they didn't believe me. But I won. I was correct. Hospice was not. Not that it's about winning or losing in those cases, but it was something about being heard and being taken seriously at that time. Because I'm like, no, it's going to happen on this. And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yes, it is. And so that morning they had to call me and say, yeah.
Guess what?
So, because I think at that time I was still doubting a lot of my gifts and still having a really hard time with it.
Yeah.
But and I've talked about it before, like all the signs I got around my dad's death. Like, I went to the grocery store while he was in the hospital because I didn't have any food, and amount of the bill was the last four digits of the phone number I grew up with, which was their phone number for 45 years, and he just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And so it was like and I think I put it in my second book, I Still Know What I Know. I documented all the coincidences that happened so that people could start to learn how to pay attention to those. It wasn't about, look at me, this amazing stuff happened. It was like, look, if you look for the signs, they're always there. I mean, look
Oh,
at all these things that happened and that got laid out. And that was just my way of showing people how to start to look for things.
yeah. And I try to do that,
Mhm.
especially with some of the younger people. I don't know why younger people, their parents seek me out to deal with their kids. I don't understand it, but I'll take it. I'll help where I can. But they will I was going to go to the store because I had a coupon and it was going to expire, and I didn't really need anything, but I was going to go to the store. And then the cows were out and I had to stop. And then I went on down the road and I had a flat tire. And when they got to the store, finally, they didn't even have what they wanted. Didn't
Mhm.
even have what the coupon was for. And it didn't occur to you at any time during those three things that were keeping you from going to the store that maybe you shouldn't go to the store. Oh, Yeah, yeah. But things like that happen and people just ignore them.
Mhm. I think people are starting to become more and more aware of it. Um, so I think that people are starting to watch for it, because it's becoming part of our culture now.
Right.
People are talking about signs, people are talking about paying attention to those things. So it always reminds me of the movie, is it What the Bleep Do You Know? Where they're
I
looking
think
at the
so.
water and they've never seen a boat before, but they could see the movement in the water, and it took them a while to see that it was boats because
There
they
was
had
the
no
boat. Yeah.
experience of boats.
Yeah.
And I think it's whatever we put our attention to, we start to notice more of. My favorite example to use is when you're stuck between buying a new car and it's between two different cars, and you finally pick one and you drive it out of the showroom. And then you're like, I can't believe I bought this car. Everybody on the road has this car. Well, if you picked the other one, everybody on the road would have
Would
had,
have that one. Yep. Yeah.
because that's what you're paying attention to.
Right. Yeah. That's it kind of reminds me of where I live. There's a lot of people that still go by what they call Apache
Mhm,
nature signs, but it's really just kind of common sense, I think.
mhm,
And I heard people talking, these two old men were talking about um, the caterpillars.
mhm.
You know, caterpillars are extra fuzzy. We're going to have a hard winter, and I was, why are they wearing sweaters? I mean, what's up with the caterpillars? And are they wearing turtlenecks? What's the deal? And they laughed when they finished laughing at me. They told me that there are certain signs,
Mhm,
and one of the guys says, "Have you noticed the cranes are here?" Well, yes, the cranes are here. They're here early. They're here about 2.5 weeks earlier than they usually are. We're gonna have a hard winter. I'm like, well, what about the caterpillar? Are the cranes eating the caterpillars? I wasn't following their logic. But there are all kinds of things.
mhm,
If the horned toads are born in the summer and they're a darker shade than they normally are, then you're going to have a harder winter. Like, how do you know all this stuff? Where do you get this stuff? And they said it was old Apache knowledge that
mhm,
they would just pay attention to the signs that nature is giving us. And
mhm.
we just overlook it all the time. And just because I was curious, I went on the NOAA site. Yes, we're supposed to have an extra hard winter this year. And maybe these guys had already known that and they were just messing with. I don't think so, though. They seemed awfully sincere in
Mhm.
their concern for fuzzy caterpillars and cranes and dark horned toads. It was just, the more questions I asked, the more different things they told me, different signs that they told me. And these people were born and raised here, and they're each in their 80s now. So I'm guessing they
They've
know.
lived through a few things.
Yeah. But I always find that kind of stuff fascinating because if it's weather related,
Mm,
like Farmer's Almanac,
mhm,
why is that acceptable to talk about fuzzy caterpillars and dark horned toads? And it's not acceptable to say, you may not want to go to the store today because I see car trouble in your future. It just seems like it's kind of the same,
mhm.
or it should be.
But that's been proven to be true. They're now
Yeah,
just starting to prove some of this stuff to be true.
yeah,
You had what, Kirlian photography that took pictures of the aura, and that's
yeah.
when I feel like a lot of things started to change when they could start to quantify things. We don't do so well with not understanding everything.
No, no. As a species, we don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's look at the like paranormal fields
Mhm,
and how they're getting different evidence that are proving that there is something going on in these different locations. And I have a friend in the Pacific Northwest who routinely goes Bigfooting.
mhm,
That's just what they do with their time. They go out and they are convinced that they have enough evidence to prove that these creatures are real. And when you look at all the different things that we have found, all the the creatures that are just now being discovered. I read somewhere that every month thousands more insects are being classified in the rainforest. How do we know what we don't know? You know, there's so much that we don't know, and yet as humanity, we think we've got it figured out.
Well, what they're telling me to add to this conversation is because we're more aware and more perceptive. All these things were there.
Yeah,
We just couldn't see them
right.
because they were in a different dimension. And so as we jump and shift, what we have available to us or can see is going to shift and change. It's like I've heard a lot of talk about the ancient scrolls in Africa,
Yeah,
and they're just in plain view. It's just they're in a different dimension,
yeah,
so people can't see them yet to discover them, but they're there. So it's just really interesting when you really start to think about that stuff.
yeah, yeah, it is. And one of the things that my Bigfooting friend said, when they go onto um, Native American reservations, and these people have grown up with the culture of these are just different beings. You
Mhm.
know, that's all they are. They're different beings, but they do exist. They're just different. And he asked, well, if your people see these beings all the time, why can't we? And it was, I think it was a medicine man they were talking to. And he said, because you're not seeing with the right eyes.
Yeah, back to what the bleep do you know in the boats.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. It's incredibly interesting. That kind of stuff is so interesting to me. Different cultures in general, but different people see different ways.
Mhm.
But I liked that terminology because you're not seeing with the right eyes.
Mhm.
I thought that was
You know, Growing up, it's really interesting because I still have a lazy eye, but I never bumped into anything, and everyone wondered how, because the eye doctors were like, "How is she not, like, constantly?" Because I was looking out my third eye when I was little. I
right.
wasn't looking through my physical eyes. I
Right.
remember when I started to do that, I would get violent headaches because my eyes would fight, and they kept thinking it was my physical eyes fighting, the good eye and the bad eye fighting. It was me fighting with my third eye.
Right.
And I wish like someone at the time had known all that, but they didn't. I mean, and that's okay. I went through a lot of eye therapy and a lot of issues and stuff, but it's just really interesting because, like, if I had a child come up to me now and say that experience, I'd be like, well, what are you seeing?
Right.
What's going on for you? What kinds of visions are you having? So it's just interesting.
Yep. Yep. It, yeah. Very.
Anything else we want to cover today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Um, I'm sure this discussion might elicit some questions for next
Okay.
week.
All right. So those of you who are watching it either in From Fear to Freedom on Facebook, or if you're going to watch this on YouTube, if you have questions after watching this, please reach out to Kelly and I, or post it in the comments section, and we'll check before we do the next one so that we can make sure we can answer all your questions.
Yep.
So with that, everybody have a great evening, and we will see you all again next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye.